Hi everyone, welcome back here on this channel. I am so happy to see you again. So for today's video, we are going to tackle and discuss about my final task here in PSY6 or cognitive psychology. So for this video, we are going to have two parts, one for letter A and one for letter B. So first, let us start with letter A. First scenario is, how would you describe the cognitive processes of a person who is a fanatic and the victim of disinformation? In psychology, it's really important for us to be able to filter the information that we gather so that we will become credible sources. Primary and secondary sources are not just dependent on books, on websites, articles, journals, and etc., but also it is also us as individuals who consumes and who creates information hand in hand. First, let us tackle about what is cognitive processes. Cognition includes basic mental processes such as sensation, attention, and perception. Cognition also includes complex mental operations such as memory, learning, language, use, problem-solving, decision-making, reasoning, and intelligence. It works for us to solve problems we encounter in our daily lives. And also, based on the reading materials provided, I have gathered three related concepts that is related to this disinformation or being fanatic. First is the confirmation bias. So this is where you look at the evidence that confirms our ideas while avoiding or ignoring evidence to the contrary. Next is the belief perspective, the tendency to cling to initial conceptions or beliefs despite proof to the contrary. And lastly is the framing. How an issue is posted or presented can significantly affect the decisions and judgment of a person. Now, let us describe being a fanatic. So, loyalty turns into fanaticism when it becomes wild and unreasoning, and into resignation when it displays the characteristics of reluctant acceptance. Loyalty is an important social function, only by an individual's willingness in cooperating with others and investing intellectual and moral resources. Fanaticism, meaning enthusiastic, ecstatic, raging, fanatical, and furious, is a belief of behavior involving uncritical zeal or obsessed enthusiasm. Fanaticism is an emotion of being filled with excessive, uncritical, particularly for an extreme religious or political issue or political cause, or with obsessive enthusiasm for a pastime or hobby. The difference between a fan and a fanatic is that while both have an overwhelming liking or interest in a given subject, behavior of a fanatic will be viewed as violating prevailing social norms, while that of a fan, it will not violate those norms, although it is usually considered as unusual. So that's the difference between the two. Also, I have gathered here a photo of categories of fanaticism. Let us go down to victim of disinformation. It is also important to note that fanatic and this victim of disinformation goes hand in hand, so they are somehow related. In this video, we are going to divide them so that you'll be able to connect which is which. The psychology of disinformation, or the mental shortcuts, confusions, and illusions that encourage us to believe things that aren't true. Misinformation effect states that information can be added or changed, and therefore the long-term memory of the individual will be modified, but believed to be the actual event or recall of the event as it happened. In today's social media and technology-driven world, eyewitnesses may be exposed to news stories that may influence their memories as time goes on. It is advised not to talk with anyone for the eyewitness due to it can lead to misinformation. If an event did not have a person's full attention when it was happening in the past, it may be possible to have someone fill in the gaps with different information, making it possible for the information to form a different version of the memory, or it can lead to the disinformation. That is where a victim of disinformation comes in. It is when our memory for past events is altered after being exposed to misleading information. On the other hand, false memory is a memory of an event that is entirely false or partially distorted. Now, studies continue to explore the disinformation effect today, finding more factors that either promote or reduce the misinformation effect. One recent study found that post-learning stress can reduce the misinformation effect, while another study found that bilingual witnesses are more susceptible to the disinformation effect in their less proficient language. Today, however, studies on misinformation aren't limited to behavioral experiments, but also attempt to understand the neural mechanism that can explain the malleability of our memory. We must know how to differentiate and identify what information we take in. As psychology major, it is my utmost job to do so. It is our utmost job. So the least we can do is we should not be a fanatic or a victim of disinformation, but rather be a light in order to aware, inform, educate people with right, factual, and evidence-based information so that we could be able to nurture and spread right information just as we deserve in this community, society, and country at large. So now that we have tackled the part A of this video, now let's go to the part B, or the second part of this video. Use the step-by-step process of the problem-solving cycle to help address the cognitive dissonance of the person. We are going to connect the first scenario to this scenario, since I firmly believe that they are just interrelated. So if you're interested about that, then just keep on watching. So first, let us tackle about what is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a mental conflict that occurs when your beliefs don't line up with your actions. It's an uncomfortable state of mind when someone has contradictory values, attitudes, or perspective about the same thing. Cognitive dissonance can be problematic if you start to justify or rationalize destructive behaviors, or if you start to stress yourself out by trying to rationalize the dissonance. When unaddressed, it can lead to an impaired decision-making. How I combat or fight being a fanatic or victim of disinformation as a psychology student. The step-by-step process of the problem solving includes 7 steps. Now we are going to tackle step by step. First is the problem identification. Knowing the problem, or do I actually have a problem? I might be a victim or adhering to disinformation. Next is I am being a fanatic, and my basis or roots is not factual and balanced anymore. That is me knowing that I have the problem. Second, definition of problem. So, what is exactly my problem? So my problem is I am adhering to disinformation, which is deliberate and includes malicious content such as hoaxes, spear phishing, and propaganda. It spreads fear and suspicion among the population. I am trying to do a justification because I have a cognitive bias towards my choice, and I do not take any information that does not align with what I want. It is not loyalty anymore, but more of a fanaticism because I defend the good parts and ignore the bad, factual and evidence-based. So now I am defining the problem. What is exactly my problem? We are down to the third step, the strategy formulation. How can I be able to solve the problem? This is where I develop a range of possible solutions to my problem. Now, for me to be able to solve my problem, as a psychology student, I have the ability to read. I have the ability to think critically and filter and evaluate the information that I take in. So, before I decide and before I conclude a person or an information, I have to be able to go into a rigorous process first in order for me to be certain about my decision so that it will not turn into being a fanatic or fanaticism, and I will not fall into a trap of disinformation. My solution is definite and my solution is SMART. So meaning it is simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. I'll now go to the organization of my information. So how do the various pieces of information in the problem fit together? I will focus here on what I can control and what I cannot control. So what I can control? I can control the information that I take in. As a psychology student, I have the ability to think critically and make sure that I am getting enough resources so that I can be able to conclude, defend, and be able to widen my perspective, because I will not just base my decision or my choice in just one perspective or one view, because it will just lead me to unresolved or incomplete sense of the entire prospect. I will be evaluating the effectiveness, the feasibility, and the potential impact. Effectiveness in a way that, is this information really suffice the entire decision that I'm going to make? Does this allow me to be able to not be a victim of misinformation or disinformation? Especially as a psychology student, we always have our choice to decide. We promote good judgment. So before I choose my, for example, good political bet, I have to do a rigorous research in order to combat and fight disinformation. Next is the allocation of resources. So how much time, effort, etc. should I put into this problem? Now, what I will do is, I have the time and I have the effort to do so. I will be researching and fact-checking as someone who is capable of doing so, because I believe that psychology students are so particular with the information that we take in, and we know exactly how to do research. It is my utmost job and responsibility to research using website, books, primary sources, or even people that is reliable, in order for me to be able to exert the enough time and effort, so that at the end of the day, I am certain that I allocated my resources well and I did my research before I became this certain. Like identifying and using my resources needed to solve the problem right. So now that I am aware that I am being fanatic and I am a victim of this information, I have to exert time and effort to do research, to read journals, to read articles, books, and all, so that I could be able to suffice or debunk this information that I previously had. Sixth step is to implement and monitor the problem solving. Now that I was able to plan and know, and I was able to allocate the resources, now I will be asking myself, am I on the right track as I proceed to solve the problem? So I will be implementing fact-checking and research every now and then, like before I fall into being fanatic and being a victim of this information. Does it follow ethical standards? Is the information that I have consistent? Am I just being biased? It's like asking myself, am I being effective in getting or standing for this position? Developing a plan and monitoring the implementation. And then I have to also look while doing so, am I being consistent in doing that, or it's just one day and I went back again to being fanatic, being a victim of this information? Because if it's just a one-day thing, then there's no growth, there's no progress at all. It is important for me to monitor if there is progress, because I can now know if I need modification regarding the solution that I have provided. Do I need to do more? Do I need to revise more, so that later on I'll be able to come up with a much stronger and effective solution? And lastly, evaluation, the most important one. Evaluating problem solving. Did I solve the problem? So now as a psychology student, I will ask myself every now and then, am I being effective now? Am I being certain with the decisions that I had before compared to now? Now that I went into the rigorous process from step 1 to 6, am I being certain now? Am I effective? Did I solve the problem, or did I just make it worse? And now, having to evaluate, you know what to do, the pros, the cons, the things that you have to work on, the advantages, the disadvantages, the weakness, the strengths, so that I'll be able to apply more if I need more assistance. So that is how I combat being a fanatic or fighting being a victim of disinformation as a psychology student. That being said, when cognitive dissonance is properly addressed, it can lead to better decision making and greater self-awareness, thus making you a better person. Miss, if you're watching, thank you so much for an amazing cycle 1. Again, this is Josh, and keep learning, keep growing, stay safe. Bye!